if you want to be popular, just donate your money. Like,
Yeah, like if the
I kind of
incentive
like
is if
that.
the incentive is to have a building named after you or some other thing named after you, like
Like, why
do it.
not do it?
It'd be cool if you were running that marathon and you just like ran by and they're like, oh, there's Zoran Mamdani. As the cynical, skeptical journalists that we are not so sure it's gonna work out.
The Democratic Party has had a sprinkle of W's in the past 24 hours.
Feels like there's still something happening every day, like the oral arguments for the tariff case.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Washed Up. I'm Abby, this is Colin, and this is episode 30. And we report on the news so that you don't have to listen to the legacy media that your grandparents do.
And yesterday was election day in the US, and there was several results that we want to get into. I think everyone's really been talking, especially about New York and the mayoral election in the city where Mamdani won. And so we can probably start off talking about that race, but there's several others we're going to get to.
Yeah, Mamdani winning, I didn't think I was surprised by. I did see a lot of young people posting about it on social media, which I think is a really cool thing that a lot of young people got involved in that, especially a lot of people that I follow from college and even high school who are now living in New York too, and mutuals is of that as well, which is the positive thing that I want to talk about first when it comes to what's going on there as well.
It seems like he won about 50% of the total vote, and Cuomo came in second with about, I think, 42%, and then Sliwa was like 7%. So the big thing was a lot of people were saying, well, Curtis Sliwa should have dropped out. He was kind of the wrench in all of it, and if he had dropped out, maybe Cuomo could have picked up that extra like 7 or so percent, and maybe they would have been closer between Mamdani and Cuomo. Because we talked in last episode about how Mamdani and Cuomo are both Democrats, but represent very different parts of that party. And so this election was kind of going to be like a little bit of a referendum on which, I guess, wing of the Democratic Party is more popular right now.
I don't think that anyone has the right to talk about somebody dropping out of an election. Personally, I'm not a fan, anyways, of the two-party system, even though that is what we are. So I'm kind of glad that he stuck it through because I'm an advocate for a multi-party system, which ideally is how I would want to run the country if I could.
I got a little bit of flack last episode for saying that if I had to vote in New York, which I'm not registered to vote in New York and I didn't, that I would vote for Sliwa. And we got like a little comment about like, oh, I stopped watching when you said that, which was kind of funny because I'm not voting in New York. But yeah, I agree with you. Like I like people running because they're, passionate and like he earned that nomination for the Republican spot on that ballot. So I don't know, like he was a bit of a spoiler, but at the same time, I agree with you. Like we should have more people trying to run, even if they're not necessarily bound to win. Um, yeah, but so also Mamdani, he gave his victory speech, and it was kind of a bit of a fiery speech. Did you happen to catch any of his remarks?
I think I saw some clips slash some quotes, but I'm not sure if it was from the victory speech or not.
It was interesting because his tone was very fired up, and he was kind of he ran through like, oh, I was running for this group of people and this group of people, and a lot of the he was saying like he was running particularly for the working class because he was very dialed in on affordability and bringing
Mhm.
down prices and things like that. And yeah, his tone was very, very passionate. And it was a little bit of a switch up from when he was running on the campaign trail. I feel like he was a little bit more subdued, a little bit more chill, and then this was a heck of a speech, I think.
I almost think that's the way to go in terms of if you're trying to get voters who might not be gung-ho for all of your ideas and you're trying to get like more of the swing people or independent voters. It makes sense to me why he might be a little chiller and then go a little harder on his ideas. I feel like a lot of people should do that and take up advice on that in terms of PR and in terms of winning over voters, something that Trump does not know how to do. Actually, you know what? Trump, even though intense during his campaign, he's probably even more intense now. So but his intensity level is just so high that somehow he got even more.
Yeah, I think my personal preference would be it's probably smarter politics to do it.
Smarter politics, but not as transparent, I guess. Transparent might
Right.
be a too strong of a word.
Well, no, I agree. So I think like it's smarter politics to be more subdued on the campaign trail and then like bring your passion when you're actually in the role. However, I think my personal preference is people be really upfront with like I'm gonna do this, 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 very passionate on the campaign, and then once you're in office, then now you're governing for everyone. And so I think I personally prefer it when candidates are very upfront with their ideas from the get-go, and then they kind of swing to the middle and appeal to everyone once they're in office. But I don't think that gets people elected nearly as often.
No, I don't think so either. So, what do you think about the future of New York right now and what's going to happen? What do you think about Mamdani's policies?
So we talked last episode about how he is a declared Democrat socialist and how his policies are going to do things like subsidize public transportation, so to make it free. He's promising free childcare for, I've heard there's 500,000 children out there in New York, so that's going to be quite the heavy tax burden. He's going to freeze rent, build more housing. But all of these are kind of the government interfering in economics and the free market, which I think tends to drive prices up, and people tend to leave because of the heavy tax burden, and then the people who end up footing that bill are the very people he's trying to help.
I think that you have a really good point. Um, if for me, I think about everything that he's talking about, very idealistic. We were talking a little bit off camera about how ideally, like, yeah, I would want to see public transit be cheaper and I would want to see free childcare and all of these things, but I'm really concerned about how it's going to happen, kind of what you were alluding to. I think if I was in New York, I probably would have voted for him if I'm being very transparent, but I am critical of all the people that I vote for, and all politicians in general. So I'm really interested to see like how last episode we were talking about New York being this guinea pig city. I almost think I think if successful, it will do a lot for us in terms of, like I said, being the guinea pig city and testing out on different cities and states and seeing how it works out for other more small scale cities. But if it doesn't, the pendulum will certainly swing back. Um, Even though New York City especially is more on the liberal left side.
It's reminding me of Buenos Aires, which Abby and I both went to in 2024, and it's a great city. And we got there just as Milei was elected president, and he came in on this platform of deregulating. And for the longest time, Buenos Aires had like one of the highest regulatory burdens of almost any city, and he's been deregulating like I've heard two regulations a day he's getting rid of. And it's had an effect of bringing like rent prices down, which is something that's a big topic of concern in New York, where we were just talking about
Mhm.
how was a one bedroom in New York was
Around 4,800 something. Um, oh my gosh, I
yeah.
literally just had the article up, but a one bedroom apartment in Manhattan average would be that much, like in the city. I think the same article, I think it was from CNN, honestly. I don't know. I'll look before um referencing it. But in Brooklyn as well, it was like 3,800 as an average one bedroom. And in DC, it's not nearly
It's
as much.
not nearly as much. It's
Still
still
expensive,
pretty expensive.
at least for entry level work people.
Yeah. So that's a huge problem in New York, and it sounds like Mamdani's plan for it is to freeze rent prices and build more housing. However, I'm concerned that that doesn't really get at the heart of why the rent prices are so high, which is the regulatory burden on construction, which is going to still be a problem even if they're building government subsidized housing. They're going to have I've heard that it's going to cost around 100 billion over the course of the next 10 years to build the housing that he wants to build.
So
Um,
that money, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to come from the increased tax on the wealthy, right?
yeah, he said in
Is the plan.
particular he wants to raise the corporate tax rate in New York City to match
New
New
Jersey's, which is
Jersey's.
like 11 point something percent.
And I think that that's kind of how he plans to cover it, which is, like we said, it's kind of classic socialism, tax the rich to pay for, different programs and whatnot for the lower income people. However, that cost, like we said, people are probably going to leave New York City, and the rich are very savvy at knowing how to manage their money in such a way that they don't have to pay all of these increased taxes.
Basically, the rich can get around any rule.
I mean, that's kind of what Donald Trump was known for.
Yeah.
When he was running, he was, like a billionaire also, but he said openly on the campaign trail that he didn't have to release his tax returns, and even if he did, like it wouldn't matter. He basically had talked about how he was very good at not paying taxes, but he was proud of that as a
Oh,
feature of being a billionaire. And I think that a lot of people who are more wealthy in the city are that way as well. And we'll find different ways to get around the taxes, whether it be different loopholes or just leaving altogether.
I wonder if he'll implement any regular. Well, you can't stop someone from leaving, obviously. That would be crazy.
That would be like the Soviet Union and Venezuela, which are also socialists.
But I'm wondering what his plan is for when the billionaires start retaliating like that because like we were saying, like I agree with you. I think billionaires get around so much more than the average person realizes. Like it is so it ideally like yeah, that billionaires aren't ethical. Like I don't think that anyone should have that amount of money because you can't even use that in your entire lifetime. I think ideally in the perfect world, the billionaires will go back to philanthropy like it's meant to be to give away their money so that they're maybe just millionaires. Like I don't know. But that's like not in a perfect world that is what's happening, but it's not what's happening. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen if these people leave, if they get around it, and who is going to end up being taxed.
Right. And I'm not sure. We talked a little bit beforehand about like, is there a certain amount of money where you could cap it and say like, once you get this amount of money, no more money for you. And personally, I think like we can't start drawing too arbitrary of lines around like how much a person can and can't earn because I think that would kind of skew the incentive structure to earn. And like you said, I think I agree with your solution though that philanthropy has to make a comeback in a major way because back when we had, like the so-called robber barons of like the Gilded Era, they were very known and took it as a point of pride to be highly involved in philanthropy. And I think that would be wonderful today if we could get not just billionaires investing in companies and whatnot that benefit all of society, but also like philanthropic endeavors to kind of just uplift everyone.
I saw this meme on Instagram like a while back, and it said something like billionaires, millionaires, rich people used to start philanthropy, and now they just get TikTok famous. And now they just influence, and I'm
Did you
like, that's
see
so true.
Billie Eilish recently? She was at some award ceremony
Oh yeah, I did see that actually.
and she called out saying like, I know there's some billionaires here in the room and like that's just too much money. Or she was like, why do you have that much money?
She's like, if you're a billionaire, respectfully, like why? I think she said something very similar to that. I think she looked really nervous in that video. I think to say something like that in front of powerful people is a hard, scary thing to do. And I wonder if that happened like on the spew of things, in the spew of the moment, or if she had planned. I'm sure she was thinking about it and was like, I need to say something. I feel like Billie Eilish is one of those celebrities who I find speaking out more about certain things like wealth and I'm wondering if anyone in the room had some faces at that.
Well, I think she's really popular because people see her as kind of a spokesperson for Gen Z. And so, in as much as she's critical of billionaires, I think she's giving a voice to something that a lot of Gen Z feels, which, in her words, like, why do you have that much money? But I agree with the solution that we just put forward of will encourage more philanthropy. And I think there's nothing wrong with having a large amount of money. Um, but I do think like putting pressure on people with large amounts of money to be more charitable is a great solution. Like I know like J.K. Rowling was a billionaire for the Harry Potter series and then donated it down to I don't know what her net worth is now, but she went back under $1 billion through charity and whatnot. And I think that's great.
I like that Billie Eilish called that out too, being like, give away your money, basically.
Well, it's like I
She
think
gives away her money a lot too, and she never like the best kind of billionaires or millionaires are the people who are doing it just to do it. But honestly, if the incentive is to be, if you want to be popular, just donate your money. Like,
yeah, like if the
I kind of
incentive
like
is
that.
if the incentive is to have a building named after you or some other thing named after you, like
Like, why
do it.
not do it? Like, I don't see the bad part about that.
Yeah. Well, so anything else about Mamdani's policies? I got a couple more things.
You can go, and I'll jump off of you.
Okay, so we talked about the rent stabilization, we talked about free transportation a bit, we talked about free childcare and how that seems a bit pie in the sky. Um, what's another one of his economics? He had a couple. Oh, he wants to raise the minimum wage
To
to
30.
$30 by 2030. And so we were talking about how when we lived in California, they did that where for fast food workers, they raised it from around 16 to $20, I believe, when in 2024. And apparently there was some research done about the effect that that policy had, and it brought employment down in fast food by a not a huge margin, but like substantial enough. It was like 18,000 fewer jobs in fast food because I think when you increase the wage that you have to pay employees, it incentivizes employers to just lay people off as a way of covering that cost. And I think everyone who's worked in fast food can agree that working with fewer employees does not make the experience worth maybe the extra $4 you might get per hour. I think um, personally, having worked previously at Chipotle, I am not sure what I would and wouldn't be willing to take in exchange for having a lot less coworkers, people working at the same time as you because fast food is known to be like you're scrambling all the time. You're just trying to like make it through your shift, and personally, I don't think that's a good trade-off.
I think that the restaurant industry, not I think, but I know the restaurant industry is kind of dying off too, in that people don't have enough money to like go out every day. Young people, young professionals who are moving to cities especially, like are not going out. They're not spending their money
Can
out
I
and
just say
about.
quickly, speaking of Chipotle, their stock price is down from like $60 to now like 30 or
Wow.
so.
Yeah.
Their stock price is way down, and their CEO is saying it's because young people can't afford their food at the moment, which is, I mean, that tracks with what I'm observing
hmm
personally.
Even like when you go out to, I guess, like fast casual restaurants, there's a lot of jokes about corporate people like going out for a bowl and seeing what kind of like international food in a bowl. And the bowls are so damn expensive. They're like
They're so good.
they're so good, but they're like $16 or something like that for maybe a standard bowl with no adjustments or anything like that. And I agree, the restaurant industry is dying because people are trying to save more money and not spend as much. Even bars and social spaces that you go out at night, people are not going, but people are pre-gaming so hard or drinking other places in their own homes or at parties or whatever because it's way cheaper and way more effective that way too. I saw an article about, I'm gonna try to find the article, but I saw an article about this too and why prices are even being jacked up in that way. So also going back to the $30 an hour thing, I remember I remember like what we were saying in California, like all of that happening and a couple people getting laid off at the time in terms of friends and family and such. So I'm really interested to see what's gonna happen there too. Ideally, in the most perfect world, people are getting paid $30 an hour in the market that we live in right now, but I don't want to see people getting paid $30 an hour and then getting having to pay like 15 for a Mickey D meal. Like,
Right. I mean, I think the theme that we're kind of getting at is, speaking for myself at least, I think that anytime you make an artificial adjustment to the market in some way, shape, or form, whether that be like controlling the prices or controlling um, the wages or how people can and can't employ certain people. I think anytime that like there's regulations or interventions to control the market, you're going to see some kind of an adjustment in terms like it's gonna cause an effect somewhere within the whole system. And so that's why my personal view is regulate and intervene as little as possible to let things run their course. And that will tend to, I think, drive wages up and employment up also, and spending up because people will have more money. So it's like I'm very pro free market in that way. And I'm skeptical of how Mamdani's policies are going to, where the trade-offs are going to happen. Because he says it's going to happen only for the wealthy, but in practice, we've seen that that's not typically how socialism works or plays out.
I am excited to see how it plays out, honestly. It's a good experiment.
Mm.
I'm glad it's not happening to my city.
Well, it's like if everyone's truly fleeing New York,
Oh
maybe the
God,
rent
this
prices
keeps
will
me
come
gonna come
down.
up.
Like I don't know.
If the rent prices go down in New York, that would be so crazy. Maybe I'll move there. If it could match DC, I would actually consider moving to New York.
So you just had some friends come down from New York and we got to see them and hang out, and so shout out to you guys.
Yeah,
It was
I
making
know they listen.
it was making me like a bit again nostalgic for New York and the possibilities there because they seem like they're doing great.
Yeah, they're always doing pretty well, and I think I like to hear everything that happens in the city too. At the end of the day, I think New York might be a little too overwhelming for me as a city. But if it was DC prices, maybe even less, actually hopefully less, I would be able to handle New York for the right the right dollar price. So maybe Mondani will do that to me. Maybe he'll turn me into a New Yorker if his plans work out the way that they do.
And we were talking also about the way that he was able to turn out the youth vote, and so
So cool, honestly.
maybe we can touch on that a bit more because I heard that the number of people who voted in Manhattan specifically went from 1 million last time to 2 million this time. And particularly among people under 40, he won by a wide margin, and then people over 40 voted for Cuomo.
I think that's really cool, and it really shows where young people are. Young people can't afford to live in the cities that they want to live in, that
Mm.
they're employed in. The cost of living is so high, and when you're entry level, it feels like you're living paycheck to paycheck sometimes. Like your paycheck is being completely sucked out by rent. So, if anything, this shows like where I guess the young professionals of America, of New York, are standing right now. And I do think it's really, really awesome how many people he got to, I guess, show out for that. If anything, show what really matters to the future of America.
Did you see anything in terms of like especially his social media outreach and or just outreach in general engagement that you think did that turned out the young people?
I'm not sure if his social media outreach did it, more so that young people. Actually, okay, I did see a lot of influencers post about it, which is interesting because I think that they're more part of, like, I guess, the wealthier class. So I did see certain lifestyle influencers that I follow who live in New York and have nothing to do with politics post about it. I think I might have mentioned it last video too, being like pleasantly surprised that I saw these random fashion influencers advocate for him and advocate to vote in general. And I thought that was really cool. Getting young people to to advertise for the election in general is cool outside of just a presidential because I feel like everybody posts about the presidential election. Um, I think people who are the most fed up are the young people, and the young people are the ones who take up the most space on social media. So to me, it makes the most sense that young people are naturally being like, oh, this is how we're going to solve these issues. We're going to get paid more. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And ideally, yes, like I do agree with a lot of what I would hope to see happen, but the way that it's going to play out, I'm not sure I have too much faith in. But I want to have faith for it.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems a bit pie in the sky, a little bit utopian, idealist, and I think both of us, as the cynical, skeptical journalists that we are not so sure it's going to work out as planned. But for the two things that I saw Mamdani do in terms of outreach that I thought were good and smart moves, when he went on Andrew Schultz's podcast, because there's that kind of appeals to a demographic of, in particular, like younger men who are not known to be super involved in politics, but I think are looking for someone to like appeal directly to them in the same way that I think Donald Trump has successfully done in the past. And then also I saw Mamdani was out apparently at like the New York City Marathon that just happened last weekend, and apparently he was like going around taking pictures with like runners, and I just think that would be cool if you were running that marathon and you just like ran by and they're like, oh, there's Zoran Mamdani. Like that's so that would be a cool outreach method in my view, and one where you're gonna be passed by like millions of people,
hmm
or not millions, like 50, there's like 50,000 runners for that race, but you're gonna be around millions of New Yorkers who are all out to like witness and watch the marathon basically.
I texted Colin last night, or maybe today, and I said that the Democratic Party has had a sprinkle of W's in the past 24 hours.
They elected a female governor, Abigail
Governor.
Spanberger, who beat Winsome Sears, who was the lieutenant governor for Glenn Youngkin.
Yes, yes. And I wasn't really keeping up with Virginia as much as I was keeping up with New York, honestly. And um somebody had texted me about that and was like, "Oh, did you vote?" I'm like, "One, I'm not in Virginia. Two, I actually don't vote in DC either."
Yeah, same. But it is a little bit closer to home in our case.
hmm
And I heard that at least one thing that Spanberger is said she's going to do is withdraw the Virginia National Guard that are currently deployed to DC, which was something that happened under Youngkin's administration. And I think Spanberger is definitely going to be a change from the previous administration. She has her background in, I think she was in the CIA for a while and then was in Congress, representing a district outside of Richmond. So she's a bit more moderate.
hmm I'm excited to see what happens there. I love to see diversity in any sort of form when it comes to our elected officials because they have like different perspectives and things like that. Like that's another reason why Mamdani I think is exciting is that he doesn't really have as much of a background in um, politics and that he's a lot younger, which I think a lot of people are appreciative of, especially when we look at how many older people are in politics right now.
I have to say, there seems to me like there was a lot of like rage bait around Mamdani and his identity and background, being that he was an immigrant who was born in Uganda and is Muslim. I think a lot of media, especially right-leaning, was really kind of stoking like anger, fear, and all of that around his identity. And I haven't seen that around Spanberger, being
hmm
that she's the first female governor, which I'm not a fan that they're doing that with Mamdani. I'm glad that I haven't seen much of that in Virginia in that race because it was between Spanberger or Winsome Sears, who are both women, and Winsome Sears would have been the first African American
hmm
governor, female governor, but instead we have Spanberger. So
Yeah, I haven't seen any backlash against her either.
it's pretty cool. I mean, to think that in all of the state's history, they've never had a woman
I
governor
know,
is kind
that's
of
so
crazy.
crazy. Um,
I personally am not so sure about her background in intelligence and the CIA. That isn't really a point in my book, but for some people, they see that and they're like, oh, well, she's, competent, or like they think that's really cool that she was in, like, she's a spy. For me, I don't know. I think it's evidence of being part of a very entrenched bureaucracy that does a lot of shady things.
And also, I think anyone who has experience in that field too are really good at PR. And I feel like sometimes I'll look at somebody and think to myself, like, how strategic are you in the way that you're speaking right now? Which honestly, a politician needs to be if they're going to garner a lot of support from the most amount of people.
And Winsome Sears, the Republican who lost, had tried to brand Spanberger as an extremist with good PR, which didn't ultimately land with voters,
I
but
mean, I don't think she's much of an extremist.
I don't get that sense either. I do think Spanberger is more of like your kind of classic Democrat, maybe even a bit moderate. Um, she's not a socialist as Mamdani is by self-declaration.
Yeah. What else has been happening?
So the other race in Virginia that was getting a lot of attention was for the Attorney General.
Hmm.
And Jay Jones, the Democrat, won that race, but he had gotten into a texting scandal. Did you see anything about that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so back when he was serving in the Virginia legislature, he had made some comments about a Republican and her children, and they're having a disagreement on some debate. And he basically had made kind of very threatening statements saying like, well, I hope like her children die or
Mm.
get shot or something. And people, once these texts emerged and then were verified, it was first published in National Review and then other people verified. He got major blowback from it. And I personally think it was disqualifying, and the way that he said it and then he said it again and the person he was texting was like, "Are you sure about that?" And he was like, "Yes." He's like, "I mean this." And he kind of doubled,
The
tripled
double
down.
down.
And that makes me really question his integrity and just his character, I guess, in a way that I would not have voted for Jay Jones.
The way that people act around clo or behind closed doors is so scary compared to the way that they act in real life too when that's exposed.
And the thing about Attorney General, which a lot of people say AG stands for aspiring governor, which I think is hilarious. But the thing about AG is like you're the top law enforcement official of the state in this case, and it's like if he's expressed that sentiment before, does that actually speak to his qualification for this particular job as someone
Hmm.
who's supposed to be very like sober-minded and enforcing the law, not fantasizing about criminal acts.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Personally, that was the race that I felt the strongest about of all of the election results. I thought I really wish that he hadn't won Attorney
Hmm.
General. And then the last one was Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey, who's Democrat.
But yeah, the little sprinkle of Democratic wins recently. I've seen a lot of people post about it. Also, Prop 50 passed as well, which was the redistricting of congressional lines in retaliation to what was happening in Texas. Um, for I think it was like about affordable health care and a couple other topics that people are retaliating against.
That was in California.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's basically just who's going to get representation in the state, and it seems like the new districts are going to be skewed more Democrat,
Hmm.
which Newsom had said he was in favor of after Texas had re kind of gerrymandered their districts
I think
pro-Republican.
Newsom too is teetering the line of trying to become or trying to um get more on the side of Democrats again. Democrats hate Newsom, I feel like. At least very left-leaning ones do. Actually, not only just the very left-leaning ones. And he's also trying to pander a bit more to the right side as well because I think he's trying to possibly have a presidential campaign in the future? Question mark.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think so. That kind of harkens back to we're now a year out from the last presidential election, and I do think Newsom intends to run in the next cycle. But I wanted to maybe reflect a little bit about where we were a year ago and how we feel things have come since then. Now that Trump has been at least president-elect, then president for a year.
Yeah, and it's Colin's also year of living in DC.
Yep, it's been a heck of a ride.
A year ago I was in Barcelona, which is crazy to say. I was living there at the time, and I remember keeping up with the election. It was maybe like 4 a.m. when I was texting Colin and our other mutual friend about everything that was happening. And I think I woke up and it was announced that Trump had won. A year ago in my personal life, didn't know what was going on. Still don't know what's going on. Hopefully that changes soon in my 20s. But in terms of how I was viewing our government and what was going to happen in the future of the US, I remember I was not very hopeful back then. Actually, I had a lot of hope that Kamala was going to pull through. I remember even in the days leading up, I was like, oh, the polls, like, I can't really tell what's going to happen because of a lot of like the different public opinion polls that some political scientists were releasing. And I had some high hopes for Kamala and was unfortunately very disappointed and distraught, honestly. I think that day was really sad. And I could feel the sadness from so many miles away in terms of me being in Europe. I honestly wanted to be home. I was like, wow, I can't believe this just happened. And a year later, I actually still can't believe it's happening. Except when Trump does things, I'm very not surprised by it. I'm like, what else can he do?
I think in DC, the atmosphere a year ago was pretty resigned. Like, I think people weren't that shocked by the ultimate result of the election, and he won by such a margin, and especially the swing states. I think he won every swing state.
He won in Nevada.
That it wasn't like a closely contested, like maybe if we recount, like Kamala will come out as the winner. So people were pretty resigned to the result, which was very different from how it went back in 2020 when there was obviously like a huge fight over whether Biden or Trump had won, resulting in January 6th. Um,
Right.
so this last election, 2024, was not that dramatic as far as elections go, and um, but at the same time, I think people knew like they kind of had to buckle down and just brace for like the change that was about to sweep through. But even as you kind of said, I don't think anyone could anticipate the how much Trump would actually do in his first year in office. I mean, he people have compared him to a bull in a china shop, and that certainly certainly has panned out. I mean, he's had his it feels like he's had his hand in every single policy issue, kind of completely rewriting the script on a lot of it and just scaling down the government in so many ways. And now, even when things are gridlocked with the ongoing shutdown that we're still in, just reached the longest record for a shutdown.
hmm
It feels like there's still something happening every day, like the oral arguments for the tariff case, which
Yeah,
happened
yeah.
today.
There's so much happening right now, and in terms of tariffs, no one agrees with Trump. So I had Colin like break down some things to me before this because I'm like, so who is actually on this man's side when it comes to these tariffs? Trump too, I feel like he, when you get inside like the Trump-esque mind, he has all these big ideas and all these things that he wants done, but there's no practical way of doing it, and it would just further skew and mess up the ways that our systems are in place anyways.
And to your point about who supports Trump's unilateral ability to implement tariffs. I mean, his cabinet members? Question
People
mark.
who are super
The
MAGA.
the Treasury Secretary does. I mean, they were at the Supreme Court today, apparently, like listening into the oral argument. But everyone else, it seems, besides MAGA and Middle America, who want to bring manufacturing back, um, everyone who is more of like free market based or pro-constitution, including a large section of the right, are not in favor of Trump's use of the IEPA law to declare a national emergency situation in order to implement
Hmm.
unilateral tariffs. And it sounds like the Supreme Court, in their oral argument today, or listening to oral argument, was the word I kept seeing was skeptical.
Yeah, I did not think the Supreme Court would side with Trump on this one. As like what we were saying, the Republicans don't like the tariffs, the Democrats don't. Who does?
I think the only one who does is Trump himself because he likes the idea of being able to implement tariffs as a negotiating chip, like as a way of leveraging other countries to I don't know, make a trade deal with him or something. And we've seen some of those deals come to fruition, and the tariffs themselves, since he implemented, it was like a 10% on every country, but more for other countries like Canada, Mexico, on the grounds of the fentanyl that was coming across the border
Hmm.
allegedly, um, have brought in about $90 billion in revenue. But the prices that are being raised in order to raise that revenue is mostly being paid by consumers.
I don't even think that all the reasonings that he's saying for the tariffs are even like the true reasons he wants it either, too. So
It seems like, again, coming back to we've talked about before how declaring an emergency for every single thing is just
we're always in crisis mode when Trump's president.
it's like if everything's an emergency, then nothing really feels like an emergency, but that just seems like a strategy that he likes to use, and that's sort of at the heart of what the court is going to have to rule is can you do that? Is there a real national security risk here? And the security risk he cites of fentanyl coming across the border and also a trade deficit don't really have great precedent for being true national emergency.
Hmm. Even Trump's like emergency mindset, I guess. I think about the government shutdown and going back to my the friends who just visited, I thought it was really funny because they kept being like, "Where's the guard?" And they would like point them out every time we went out, and they were like, "Wow, DC's actually not as on fire as we thought." And how casual the guard is. One of our friends, she kept being like, "Should I join the National Guard? They just get to scroll on TikTok and chill in their spots and they live in DC." Like that's so funny.
Yeah, that's very true. And I'm surprised that they're still here
I'm so
because
surprised.
even like notwithstanding the ongoing shutdown, like you would think they would maybe pool their resources a little bit differently, but nope,
Yeah.
um, they're still here. And really, there's been very little progress I've heard in terms of negotiating an end to the shutdown.
God, I am praying, hoping, manifesting for this shutdown to be over. Not not mostly because of the way that everything's affected in the job market, the way that people are furloughed right now, like it actually sucks, like all these people not being able to get paid.
I think typically your average government shutdown is kind of a blip, but this one seems to
It's
be.
been a month now, right? Because it started in the
Mhm,
beginning of October, like October 1st or 2nd.
mhm. So
Yep.
it's tied the record for the longest one,
It's
and
currently November 5th.
I've heard various stories like through the news of people having to like sell their car and take other like measures to again they're not making wages and so you gotta cover your bills somehow and it's getting to that point where they've missed probably two paychecks and
Hmm.
so how are you gonna cover that? Most people, most average people couldn't just pay their bills off of missing two paychecks.
Nope.
And I've heard that also the FAA is scaling back some of its flights
Oh my gosh,
because
the air traffic controllers that actually affected two of my friends who visited. My first one, her flight just got completely canceled. I heard that it was, or I looked it up, it was like 80% of air traffic controllers like weren't showing up because like they weren't getting paid or something like that. Um, and my friend actually made a funny joke. She said, are you telling me I put my life on the line for something that has 20%? I was like, oh my God. But yeah, her flight got canceled. New York's the worst. They were flying into, I think, Newark and JFK, and that's like, I think, a lot of where it's affected. And our friend's second flight got delayed so badly that she had to refund it and buy a new flight because she needed to work the next day.
Yeah, so I mean, the longer the shutdown goes on, the more we'll start to see the results of it in that way. And I feel for the air traffic control and the people who have to oversee all the different flights going on because there was just a uh, pretty big crash on the news that was a UPS plane, I believe, in
Hmm.
Louisville. And there's not really no one has directly said whether there was anything to do with the shutdown and the air traffic control that caused that crash,
Hmm.
but I'm certainly not looking to fly anytime soon.
Yeah, and I'm flying to go home for Thanksgiving break, so I'm
I
hoping
mean,
they'll be
really
okay.
hoping the shutdown will be over by then,
Yes, please.
because that would have been like 2 months of
Hmm.
shutdown. But yeah, so that's most of what I want to talk about today.
Hmm.
There was other news of Dick Cheney passing. He was 84.
I feel like that's all I gotta say about that.
Um,
Um,
a few episodes back, I had jokingly alluded to the fact that I actually met Dick Cheney once when he was speaking at the Naval Academy, and I was like 10 or 11, maybe a little bit older than that. And he just was giving a speech, and at the end, my family kind of, got to go up and say hi. And that interaction, I couldn't tell you anything about the guy from that interaction. I just have come to know since then, like he was obviously the vice president under George Bush, has been in Republican politics forever, really, like very DC insider. Started out, I think, as chief of staff for Gerald Ford, and had a long, long career. He's kind of known for being instrumental, for better or for worse. Some people will certainly say for
I'm like,
worse,
huh, I gotta think for worse.
in the war on terror and the US's decision to get involved in Iraq with the
Hmm.
weapons of mass destruction claim. So I think that's the bulk of what he's known for now in politics and just in like polite society in general. Although he did pivot to the left at the end of his life with the last election cycle. Do you remember that at all?
Hmm.
Like,
Which seemed like a Hail Mary.
yeah, he said it was like the first time he voted Democrat for Kamala Harris, and his daughter Liz Cheney was then in Congress and heading the January 6th committee investigation, so not a friend of Trump.
That's all I gotta say this episode. There's a
Yeah.
lot happening, but I think we did good.
Yeah. It felt like a marathon race, but hopefully I think we got all the information that you guys need to know to kind of recap the elections, and a lot of the changes that are going to happen aren't going to start happening till like next year. Like I don't think Mamdani is going to be in office till the 1st of January.
It'll be a slow and steady lookout race to see what is going to happen there and what's going to happen with all these other elections or the results of the elections, I guess is what I
But
meant to
as
say.
we've learned, a lot can happen in a year.
So much.
Thinking back again to where we were when it was announced that Trump was going to be president again, and everyone just think back to how much has happened in that year. And so we'll be here to cover Mamdani's time as mayor and these new governors and delivering the news from DC.
Yes, we will. Okay. Washed
Washed
up
up
out.
out.